Yes, hello and welcome to this beginner's guide on Brawlhalla. My name is Holiday Megala and I'll be showing you what this game is, how to play it and how to not instantly get your face kicked in. So if you're completely new to this game and want to learn how to play, or you have a friend who does, then this is the video for you. So what is Brawlhalla? Brawlhalla is a 2D platforming fighting game where the objective is to knock the opponent off the stage and make them hit one of the blast zones which surround the stage. So if anyone hits one of these zones, they lose a life, or a stock as many call them. But when you try to hit your opponent off stage, you might notice that you're not really having much effect. That's because there's a damage mechanic in play. Every time you hit your opponent, you gain more damage, and the more damage an opponent has, the further he'll get knocked back by your attacks. So hitting them at yellow won't really send them that far, but at red they'll go flying. And for dealing damage, each legend has two weapons. Each legend has its own combination of weapons. For example, Bodvar uses a sword and a hammer, and Hattori uses a sword and a spear, while Queen Nai uses a spear and katars. Each weapon has a moveset which carries over between characters, so that means that Bodvar and Hattori have the same available moves when they hold a sword. When your character doesn't have a weapon equipped, you'll get the unarmed moveset. This moveset is universally the same across all legends. There are two more differences between legends, those being signature moves and stats. That bit before about all swords having the same moveset was not completely correct, because even though they share the same light attacks, they don't have the same heavy attacks. Each character has its own unique signature moves, which really give each character their own flavor. Signatures are generally heavy and slow moves that really pack a punch, meant to deal some good damage when the opportunity presents itself, or get a KO. The third difference is stats. Each character has its own distribution of the four stats: force, dexterity, defense and mobility. Force and defense are simple. The more force you have, the more damage you deal, and the more defense you have, the less damage you take. The amount of mobility you have decides how fast your movement speed is, both walking speeds, air speed and dash speeds. Dexterity affects how long the ending lag is, aka how many frames you will have to wait after using a move before you can do something else, like move, jump or attack. So now that you have a good idea of what this game is about, we can move on to how to actually play the game. So how do you do things in this game? For this explanation, I'll be using the keyboard controls as an example. First up, moving around. You move using the arrow keys, and if you have tap jump on, jump up with the up arrow. I personally prefer tap jump off, which means you need a dedicated jump button like the spacebar. Next, we have the attack buttons. In the default control scheme, those are C and X, with C being light attack and X being heavy attack. There are always three ways to press those buttons: neutral, side and down. That means that on the ground you have neutral light, side light and down light, and heavy variants of those. You get those variants by holding the direction keys in that direction while inputting the attack button. So holding to the left and doing a light attack results in a side light. In the air, it's a slightly different story. The light attacks all have an aerial variant, so neutral air, side air and down air, whereas we usually end up saying it nair, sair and there. But heavy attacks in the air don't really work. Instead, there are two heavy attacks in the air: recovery and ground pound. It's pretty straightforward. If you input down on heavy, you go down with a ground pound. If you input literally anything else, you go up instead with the recovery. Recovery lets you gain a good amount of height, so it's really useful. So to recap, these are all the possible moves. As you can see, it's divided in grounded and aerial, with the big difference lying in how heavy moves function. Next up is dodge, which is the Z or shift key. Using a dodge will make you invulnerable for a short amount of time, so use it to evade moves. In the air, you can dodge in all 8 directions. On the ground, you can only dodge while standing still. If you dodge on the ground while moving, you'll do a dash instead. A dash is a quick burst of speed, or a run if you hold the dodge button, which does not have a cooldown, but also doesn't have invulnerability frames. Using a dodge will put it on cooldown. If you dodge on the ground, it's 1 second, and if you dodge in the air, it's 3 seconds. Lastly, we have the throw/pickup button, V. As the name suggests, you can throw and pick up items with this button. By default controls, you can also pick up items with light attack, but it's recommended that you turn this off, because you might accidentally pick up a weapon when you really wanted to attack, and vice versa. So to conclude, we got moving, jumping, light and heavy attacks in ground and air variants, dodging, dashing and throwing. Might seem a bit overwhelming, but you'll get used to it soon enough. This game has a lot of fun mobility options, but they can be a bit confusing to new players. So here I'll show you what's good, what's less good, and how to do those things. First up, we've got jumps. It's the most basic part of your moving toolkit. You have 3 jumps you can use. 2 air jumps, 1 ground jump. So if someone knocks you off the ground, you have 2 air jumps, but because you're in the air, no ground jump. Landing on stage or hanging on the wall will reset your jumps. Slightly before the apex of your jump, or when falling, you can press down to fall faster. This is called fast falling.
No shit.
Side note, if you have no jumps and someone hits you, you get 1 jump back, free of charge. As mentioned before, you also have a move called recovery, performed by pressing heavy in the air while not aiming down. This move will make you gain a great amount of height. Using recovery more than 1 time will consume a jump and greatly reduce the height gained. The next mobility tool is the air dodge. It moves you a bit in the direction of your choosing, so you can use it to move around. It's mostly used for repositioning yourself, like going up a bit or getting that last bit of distance you need to get where you want to be. It's also very useful recovering back to stage, and you know, the dodging moves. It's the dodge. And finally, dashing. Makes you go fast, so that's cool. You combine it with jumps to do a quick low to the ground jump, and you can do loads of other stuff on it, and we'll go slightly more in depth on it in the next section, namely... Now for the fun part, how to actually fight. Keep in mind that this part is focused on 1v1s. In free-for-all it's not nearly as important. Most new players want to hit their opponent with the biggest moves they have, which makes sense. Big moves do big damage after all, and they're cool to hit. This is not the best strategy, however. Signatures are slow and people can see them coming, and they will punish you for using them recklessly. Instead, try building up damage with light attacks. True, they do less damage than signatures, but they're harder to see coming, meaning you'll hit them more often. They're also miles safer to use, because you can usually move very quickly after using a light attack. This doesn't mean that you should never ever use SIGs. If you see that your opponent made a mistake and you can punish them with a SIG, go for it. Simply be careful using them, because they aren't hard to evade or dodge. Speaking of dodge, you should do that. A lot. When to dodge is always a situational question, but as a rule of thumb, when you get hit, dodge somewhere. Doesn't really even matter where, doesn't matter what direction you dodge in, as long as you dodge. This way, your opponent probably won't hit you again if they try to follow up their attack immediately, which oftentimes they will, because they try to do a combo. So maybe your opponent is at red damage, but you just can't finish them off. What do? Chances are you're using a lot of SIGs to try to finish them off, and it's making you predictable. So if that's no good, what to do instead? For starters, every single sider in the game has good knockback. They are much safer than signatures, so don't forget them. Secondly, most weapons have a combo that will kill at high damage. Since combos are started from light attacks, trying to get one started is usually pretty safe. Of course, don't just spam the combo starting move over and over. That also gets predictable very quickly. Third, you can try to edgeguard your opponent. That means to hit them off stage, and then hit them while they're trying to get back. Most people familiar with edgeguarding, aka hitting people when they're off stage, will try to do so with a ground pound, which is a fine option. It's very strong and often quite fast, but somewhat easy to see coming. Try to use different moves as well to keep the opponent guessing as to what they need to evade. Every downer in the game makes for a fine edgeguard tool. Give them a shot. And if you're scared to go off stage yourself, you can just throw your weapon at them. Throws have pretty strong knockback at high damage, so you don't need to bother charging your throw. Just hit them with a quick throw and they'll probably tumble to their doom. Another thing you should probably use a lot is dash. Dash is useful because it's fast, can be used to approach, avoid moves, and generally be hard to catch. For example, just try dashing forward and immediately using a sidelight. Chances are your opponent won't be able to react to it because it's heckin' fast. To get good with dash, simply use it a lot. Dashing is safe and practice makes perfect. Now imagine, you're fighting some fella and he hits you off stage. What do? The correct answer is jump back the stage. Good job, you did it. So that was an example of what I see a lot of new players do, which is mass jump. I need to gain height, so I need to jump, and jumping faster equals more height. That's wrong. You need to space out your jumps, so that you jump when you've reached the maximum height of the previous jump. That way you get the most height of your jumps. So stay calm, get the max height, and let your enemy think that you're a wizard for coming back from the depths of hell. But what else do you do to recover? Well, let me give you an overview. You stay calm, you jump, get the maximum height, jump again, use recovery, and if need be, dodge into the stage. If you're having trouble with this, I recommend you go into training mode, walk off stage, and simply try to recover. But there's a good chance your opponent doesn't want you to get back to the stage. What do? Your opponent is likely to do one of two things. 1. Go after you and hit you. 2. Stand on the stage, wait for you, and hit you. When it's case 1, try to react to your opponent coming down and avoid them. You can use your dodge to both evade an attack and get back to stage. Once you've evaded their attack, you can even try to attack them yourself if you are so bold. In case 2, you have multiple options, but a safe option is to simply jump over them. And with over, I mean with lots of space between you two. Can't get hit if you're just too far away. Alternatively, you can also try to hit them, but that's risky. Maybe you've seen some combo videos and you think to yourself, wow, that's really cool, I want to do that too and get all the girls. While that's an honorable goal to aspire to, it's better to start small. Small combos are the most reliable way to get high damage, so learning a few ones for your weapons of choice is a sound idea. Most weapons have a downlight side air combo, but there are plenty of exceptions and variations. We will now show you some basic combos for all weapons. Training mode is awesome. You can try every legend with every skin and color. It also has a bunch of other features that may be a little much if you don't know what everything does though. For starters, F5, F6 and F7 let you freeze the game. Pressing F5 will play the game back to a previous state, frame by frame, and F6 will advance the game frame by frame. F7 is used to get out of this mode. You can also enable show damage, shows damage, duh. Show stun, shows the amount of frames the enemy has to dodge the second hit. Show hitboxes, shows what part of the attack counts as a hit. And show hurt boxes, shows the area where characters can be hit. This is tremendously convenient if you're trying to experiment with a weapon. I'd recommend turning all of these on. You can also let the bots do an attack of your choice, dodge, jump, or attack when they get hit. You can give them a set amount of damage and let that reset when the bot is either returned to the ground or on a timer. You can even let the bot mirror your every move, although that's more useful for dance competitions and cool glitchy attacks. Now this is a segment where I'll answer some questions that I see popping up time and time again on Reddit and other places. First up, is keyboard better than controller? The answer is no. No one control scheme is better than any other. Even if you look at the pros, you see that some pros use keyboard, some use controller. It really doesn't matter, just use whichever works for you. I personally can't stand keyboard, so I use controller. My friend Mr. Gems hates controller, so he uses keyboard. It's all personal preference. Secondly, What characters are meta? Don't worry about any of that. Seriously. Yes, technically there is a tier list, but it really doesn't matter at all. Currently Zol is the worst character in the game, by far. But I am a Zol main in Platinum, and I don't notice me having to work harder to win. Tiers only really start being a thing when you hit high diamond, and even then you can use Zol just fine. Tier lists are made with the highest level of play in mind, and people below diamond are just not going to achieve that level of play. Thirdly, someone called me a spammer. Does this mean I'm bad? No. It means that your opponent got upset and wants to call you names. It's unfortunate, but occasionally you'll find a rude person who's trying to tell you how much the loss wasn't his fault and how you somehow got lucky in a game without RNG. Don't pay too much attention to them unless you want to laugh at angry people. Finally, who should I use? This question isn't that easy to answer. Finding your main takes time and can change too, so for now just use the free-to-play legends and see which ones stick. I'll probably make a more detailed video on this process of choosing your main later. So there you go. This should get you well on your way to get good at this game. Of course, these tactics won't carry you to diamond, but they're not meant for that. This is just giving you the info you need to go and have fun in this game instead of floundering about like a fish on dry land. The in-game tutorial isn't very good in my opinion, so me and my friend Mr. Gems decided to make this instead. I do have to give credit to Mr. Gems because he's really the main brain behind all this. He often helps people out on Reddit and is generally better at explaining game stuff than me. It also helps that he's just better at the game than me in general. Anyway, I hope this was of help to you. I hope to see you some other time in a different video. See ya!